Hello everyone. During this video we are going to cover Comm Log updates that will be pushed tomorrow, Friday, April 21st. So this is just a quick recap of a few enhancements that IT has added. So before you access the Comm Log in Zone, you want to make sure that you're going through the transactions link in SkySlope and closing out or archiving the transactions that you need to work on. So you've received the closing packages with the checks, closing statements, gone through the system and closed or archived those transactions, and you're now ready to create a batch. So for those of you who have access to the Comm Log, you should have access to this compliance link over on the left-hand side of your menu. And you have three options: batch summary, create batch, and Comm Log. The batch summary I will go over briefly. Here you'll notice that you have the ability to search by batch number, by batch status, address, batch date, and then if you have access to multiple offices, you should have access to this drop down as well. So I'm going to go ahead and search for a batch number, just so you can see the way the information is displayed. You'll notice that the batch summary here gives you an overview of the transaction. It also gives you access to the closing package for each transaction within that batch. And then you're also able to print the batch summary as well. Now keep in mind that the transactions that are available via the batch summary have to be transactions that have already been added to a batch, regardless of status, whether it's in compliance, the compliance queue, manager queue, or the accounting queue. You'll have access to them once they've been added to a batch. And that leads us to the second option over on the left-hand side under compliance, which is create batch. The create batch screen will display transactions that have been changed to archived or closed status in SkySlope. All transactions that are changed to either closed or archived are imported into Zone every 5 minutes automatically. So that is something that happens kind of behind the scenes. So hopefully by the time you finish the process in SkySlope, by the time you get here, those transactions are visible. So that we have included a few enhancements to the page, beginning with how many transactions are displayed. Before, only 10 were displayed per page. Now the default is all. So if you have 25, 30 closings, all closings will be displayed. There is also a select all button for if you want to just select all of them and create the batch that way, or you can just select a few depending on what you need to work on. There is the property address is displayed, agent name, sales price, and then also the gross commission. So over above the gross commission, you'll notice a field where you can type in anything that you might be searching for. Let's say you're searching for a specific transaction, or maybe you're searching for a specific agent. You can use that field to search and then select the transaction that you need to work on. Also, if you are missing a transaction, maybe something hasn't imported over yet, there is a refresh transactions button in the upper right hand corner where you can go ahead and select the close date and then select refresh, and the system will then pull in that transaction that is not currently listed. So I'm going to go ahead and create this batch with all 4 transactions to show you what the new batch edit screen looks like. So I selected all 4, and I'm going to come up here to the upper right hand corner again and select create payment batch. And the system then takes you to the new batch edit screen. So you'll notice that this looks very different than what the old screen looked like. which we think is going to help once you start creating the line items and the different disbursements that are required. So once the batch is created, a batch number is assigned. The system also tracks who created the batch and on what date. That information is all there. And then the transaction details are located with agent name, address, and then any line items that have auto-generated. The edit buttons are now located on the right-hand side. So I'm going to go ahead and work on this first transaction and go through and edit. And I think everyone is now familiar with this screen here where you actually update the different transaction line items and balance and upload a copy of the PDF closing package. So I'll briefly go over this page beginning with the transaction info. This information is what's imported over from SkySlope. So property address, sales price, transaction type. Transaction documents, this is where you upload a copy of the closing package with which is usually a copy of the checks and closing statement, anything else that maybe was sent along with that. And then transaction line items. The transaction line items were updated recently, a couple weeks ago, and we did send out updated, like a little how-to guide that explains each line item. So I'll go over a couple of those very briefly that we've received a lot of questions about. But for the most part, I know that you're all very familiar with adding the transaction fees and all of that. So the information that transferred over from SkySlope for this transaction is the gross commission, which is $15,000. If you need to edit that information, you can do that by just clicking on the gross amount and then readjusting that amount and then selecting the little check mark to save. And you'll notice that the second line item that was generated was the agent commission. You are not able to delete the agent commission line item, but you can edit that amount if you need to. So I'm going to go ahead and make this $18,000 and then go ahead and save. Now for the balance of the transaction, you'll notice that we're still offset by $2,000. So I'm going to go ahead and add a transaction line item by selecting this plus sign here. And again, if you reference the material that we sent out last week or a couple weeks ago regarding the line items, this will detail, that document details exactly how these line items should be used, beginning with additional agent commission, agent garnishment, commission advance. So you'll notice that each or most of these fees either end in commission or fee. Just as a general rule, line items that end in commission are items that are being paid out as an expense, and items that end in fee, such as transaction fee, mentor ROG fee, those are income to the office. So that's something that the office is receiving. I did want to mention a couple of questions that we've received regarding the TC employee versus independent. Now we do have three options on the line items. TC employee commission, that should be used for any TCs that are also on payroll. So generally, TCs who are on payroll receive their TC commission as a bonus on their paycheck. They do not receive a commission check similar to an agent. That's just the general rule. Depends on the situation, of course, but for ROG company stores, that's definitely how we code the TC employee commission. Now, the TC independent commission, this is for TCs who are independent contractors that are approved with the office, approved Realty One Group independent TCs. This should not be used for maybe an independent TC who happens to work with a couple of your agents but isn't approved with your office. These two items right here are permission based. So when you select TC Employee Commission, only TCs who are also employees should show up in this drop down. And then TCs who are independent, same thing. Only TCs who are independent contractors should show up in that drop down as well. So if you two line items you'll be able to pull reports eventually by line item so that you can see what's being received and what's being paid out to specific people and capture rates. So that's really the focus on these two line items. And then the last one is TC ROG fee. So as mentioned previously, a fee is income to the office. So this is where you would actually designate how much is being paid to the office, the portion that the office collects. Now I'm going to go ahead and add a note here just so you can see where that note applies and shows up on the printout. But notes aren't required for every every line item. That's just optional if it applies, if you need to submit a note there. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. And I'll go ahead and then add a transaction fee just so we can zero this out. You'll notice that any fees are also only payable to Realty One Group. So you shouldn't have the ability to pay, let's say, a transaction fee to an agent name. So we've locked down those features, which is why this drop down is really just one selection now. And I'll go ahead and add that as well. And we're balanced. Now the last item I'm going to go ahead and do is upload a copy of the closing package. Once that's uploaded, you'll receive a green confirmation in the upper right hand corner. And before we move back to the edit page, I just wanted to mention the agent information over on the right hand side. This is all of the information that pulls over from the agent's profile in Zone. And there's also a remove from batch option. If you need to remove this transaction specifically from this batch, that's where you would go to remove the batch. So I'm going to go ahead and go back. The system then directs you back to the batch edit page where you can continue to work on the other transactions that you have available. You'll notice that the line items that we added, the TC ROG fee of $300 and the transaction fee of $1,700, which is a little high, were added along with the two notes that we added as well. There's also a link to the closing package that we uploaded right on this page. So if any of this seems off, you can always, of course, go back to the batch edit button over on the right hand side and make any adjustments. I'm not going to go ahead and go through every single transaction, but I did want to show you what once you print this, what this looks like now. You have a toolbar in the upper right hand corner. The first option allows you to go back. The second icon is a print batch icon. There's also a refresh transactions, which is identical to the one in the previous screen. We also have an add transactions link. Now we are working on locking this down per office, so that's coming soon. We do have it on the priority list. There's also a pass-through option. Once this is all complete and balanced and there's a closing package attached to every closing, you can approve and submit to your manager, and then you can also empty and remove and start all over if you need to. So let's assume this is all balanced, you're ready to make your deposit, and you need to print the screen. You're going to go to print batch. And you can either save this as a PDF or print it and have the check stapled or whatever your process is. So once you print or save this page, this is what you'll have. You'll notice that when you print, it will only print in landscape format, and the reason for that is that we added the notes over on the right-hand side. So any notes that were typed in will be visible on this page. You also have the transaction batch number, who it was created by, and on what date. TC Employee Commission, which previously in MyRog showed up at the top of the Comm Log batch summary, now will actually be displayed at the very bottom. We don't have any for this training, but this is where that information would be visible. Again, we are working on a report, that I'm sure a lot of you use, but for now it will be visible at the very bottom of the Comm Log. So going back to the Comm Log, once this is all balanced and approved, you would then go ahead and submit this to your manager, who would then have basically an identical view of what this screen is displaying. So when they log in to approve Comm Logs going forward, they will be able to see all of the line items and also have access to the closing packages right on the screen versus going into each one individually as we had to do previously. Now, if you have any questions about this process or this screen, we're always open to any notes or suggestions. We actually made a lot of these updates based on the feedback that we received from you. But I'm going to go ahead and move on to the Comm Log, the third option over on the left-hand side. And the Comm Log overview will give you access, kind of like a high-level access of what is still available in the different queues. So for managers, this is where managers will go to see what they have in manager review. For compliance, you can always come in here to see if you have anything in compliance review, but normally you're probably going to be going into create batch and submitting through that way. But if you need an overview of what's in the different stages, you can always come in here. Under accounting review and under queued for export, you should have, as someone who has compliance permissions, nothing more than compliance permissions or office manager, you should have access to a read-only format of the different queues. So for example, if you're in accounting, you can see what's in accounting and you can work on what's in accounting, but you can only view, it's a read-only format of what's in compliance or manager. The same would go for someone who's an office manager. You can view and work on what's in your queue, but you can't edit anything in compliance or accounting. So we did notice that under accounting, for example, this account that I am currently training under does not give me my view only button. So that is something that we have already discussed with IT. But eventually you will have access to that information. For now, you always have access to the batch summary, which gives you access to search for any batch that has been created, regardless of the queue that it's in. It is a read-only format, which is what you're looking for at this point. And you can search again by batch number, address, batch date, or office. And last but not least, I wanted to mention the support area, where we are currently updating and uploading content on zone enhancements. So if you select support and then go to support center, you'll notice that we added a new area under admin resources called zone enhancements. So the last set of zone enhancements that we added to this area was on April 4th, and that was related to the Comm Log line items. So just as an overview, this is specifically for our Arizona stores, but this details all of the line items, such as additional agent garnishment or additional agent commission, agent garnishment, mentor, the TC fees that we went over. So all of this here outlines, it gives you a brief description and kind of an overview of how you should use those drop-down options. So we have one for Arizona, California, Nevada, and then also for our affiliates. We also have a couple how-to guides, how to close and import into the Comm Log, which again occurs within SkySlope. So this is just a more detailed how-to guide. And then also how to create and process a Comm Log, which goes over, I know I went over this pretty quickly just to kind of focus on the enhancements to the system. But I did want to make note that we do have a more detailed how-to guide available here as well. Thank you so much for watching, and please let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.